Welcome to Bound by Books, a podcast of five authors across multiple genres talking about the one thing that binds us all, books. And today, I'm Marianne Morea. Well, I'm always Marianne Morea, but I'm
Hi,
Marianne Morea, joined today by a fellow author and friend, Tina Moss.
hello. I have my virtual background on today, so this whole thing is going to be weird. Like, where is my hand? Oh, there we are.
Yeah, I know. Same thing. Same thing. So today we're talking about conventions, about reader writer conventions and virtual versus in person, because the pandemic has affected us in that way. Most of us were used to going to these big conventions and mingling with readers and networking with other authors and industry people. But that all went away when the pandemic hit. And so some of them went virtual. And now that some of them are back in person, there's still a virtual component. So we're going to weigh the pros and cons and talk about our experiences, and maybe even let you take a peek behind the curtain with some of the things that we've done that we're not so proud of. So maybe some secrets. Let some secrets out.
I've got some great convention stories because I've attended conventions both as an author and as an editor. So I've attended for the small press as well, and I have some very interesting stories about attending as an editor. It is a different experience than attending as an author, but both of them are fun. I do have to say I really like the option of virtual. I know it kind of came out of the pandemic, so it came out of not a great thing, but I do think, especially for authors that can't attend in person, it's an excellent option to be able to get more people to attend, and maybe you don't have the same networking experience that you do in person, but you can attend all the panels and you can learn from them. So that's a really nice thing to offer as well. So
yeah, I mean, I just recently had my first experience. Well, actually, no, that's not true. Not my first experience, but because I did attend Inkers Con virtually this year. Inkers Con is an industry author event, and it hasn't been in person since the pandemic hit. But Alessandra Torre decided she still wanted to make all the resources available, so she did it virtually, and there was no in-person component. But this year, 20 books to 50K in Vegas, where Tina was in person and I was virtually. So we're going to talk about that. Tell me what happened. That spill the tea, girl. Spill the tea.
So nothing too crazy at this particular convention. I had a really great time. Made a lot of connections, and I do think that that's the benefit to being in person at a conference or a convention, is really making those connections with your fellow authors, with industry professionals. It's different because when so quick story, when you email somebody, right, it's kind of easy to be able to ignore that email if you're an industry professional. But when you then see that person in person and you introduce yourself, it's a lot harder to ignore the email because now you have a face and a name and somebody that you've actually met. So there is just that aspect of it alone. It's the same, I think, for authors trying to go traditional of pitching an agent or an editor in person. It's a lot harder to turn somebody down, when to reject somebody when you're seeing them face to face. So
yeah,
there is that aspect.
The dreaded elevator pitch where you've got them cornered.
So that is the story. As an editor, I've taken teams with me to conventions because of through the small press, through City Owl Press. We sometimes go as a team, and one of my editors has gotten pitched literally in the bathroom.
No.
Yep, in the bathroom.
Like through the door, through the stall door?
In the ladies' room. Apparently she was washing her hands, so it was not like through the stall door. So there's, a little small saving grace. But yeah, in the ladies' room at a convention. I myself have been pitched while I was sitting on the floor packing a bag that we were packing up. I think it was after, gosh, I can't remember now, but after one of the tables that we did, one of our vendor tables, we were packing everything up, and I was on the floor locking stuff up when a person approached me and said, "Hey, can I tell you about this?" And it's very hard to say no, even in that circumstance. I kind of was like pointing to the bag awkwardly and then pointing to the person, and I was like, well, it's not the best time. And then they immediately went into their pitch, and I was like, okay, I guess this is happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I have never done an elevator pitch with anybody.
You've never done it, really?
No, no. I remember the scariest thing I ever had to do was at a Pitchapalooza at RT back in 2013, pitching to the different editors, and acquiring editors and acquiring editor assistants that were there for some of my stories. But I have to say, I did have one elevator encounter with Angela Knight, who I happen to be a fan of her work. And she was in the elevator with her husband, Mike. And I was at the time the president of the Paranormal Romance Guild. Okay. And, they do reviews and whatnot. And we had invited her to come to Undead Con with us as our special guest in New Orleans. And she had ended up having to have some surgery, what have you. So she wasn't able to go, but we took pictures. She asked us to take pictures. So I, and text them to her and email them to her. So I'm in the elevator with her and she doesn't know me from a hole in the wall. So I said to her, I turned and I went, "Hi, Angela." The poor woman. And she's so tiny. She really is. She literally backed up like 2 feet, like it was like positioning herself behind her husband. He was a big guy, Mike's a big guy. And I was just like, no, don't be afraid. I'm Marianne Morea from the Paranormal Romance Guild. I just want to know if you got the pictures from the convention that you asked us to text you. So Mike looked at her and she went like this. Like she was like this.
That's so funny.
They're just very cute together. They're very cute together. But he's like, yes, we got them. Thank you very much. So anyway,
that's hard too,
but I was
right?
like,
Because...
I felt awful. I got off the.
Oh no, but it's so true because so many authors, even, very famous authors, or not so much agents and editors, but I feel like authors in particular are very introverted. Like it's kind of a stereotype that authors are introverted, but you do get a lot of like timid, kind of semi-scared people, and conventions can be very, very overwhelming for that particular type. Anxiety, I am what I like to call the extroverted introvert. So I am perfectly fine being like super happy and in your face and yes, tell me all the things, like really excited. And then like after the convention was over, I immediately needed to like decompress for a week. Which is why I stayed with my husband in Vegas afterwards. He came out to meet me after the convention was over. Unfortunately, we are not the type of vacationers who know how to relax. So we did all the things, like we walked the strip and we went to the Hoover Dam and we were just constantly going. So now that I'm home, I'm kind of like ready to just be by myself for a couple of days to really.
I remember one of the things about in person is the same thing that we were just talking about, is that you have to be on all the time. I likened it to when my husband asked me, well, I don't understand what you mean. And I was like, well, think of it this way. It's all, you're getting ready, you're doing your hair, you're putting on your makeup, you're getting your bag, you're making sure that all your stuff, the swag you're going to give out, the stuff you're going to have at a hand's reach to be able to give to people, readers or industry people, business cards, and have your pitches down. If you're going to be pitching, have your 5-second synopsis and your 10-second synopsis and your 15-second synopsis of your work in progress or books, whatever, so that you can either tell a reader or tell an editor or what have you. So you're prepared, and you press the elevator button and you can almost hear the theme from Jeopardy behind you, and you get into the elevator and you turn around and the doors shut. And then you go down, and then all of a sudden the doors open and the roar from the floor hits you, and you walk out and a huge smile comes on your face and you're like, I'm here. And you're just like, and you're absolutely on at that point in time. So, cause then you're on for the whole day, especially if it's a reader, if it's a reader centric event, you're on all day long, 24/7,
Well, that's the trick of it too, right? Because this was an industry event and we only had one day that was reader based, but the panels started at 8 a.m. They ended at 5 p.m. And then you have after hours events
Parties. Yeah.
where you're going to dinner, you're going to parties, you're going to shows, you're really networking. So again, it doesn't matter if it's with your fellow authors or industry professionals, you're still on during those
Yeah.
hours. Like I
Yeah.
had a wonderful evening with some other sci-fi romance authors. But it's still a performance. It's still very much energy and having people around you and having to interact after you've already gone through the entire day of like learning and taking notes and networking. Now you have even something that's fun is still work. So you're constantly on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think it's much harder
Yeah.
for people in our profession who just tend to be more introverted to have all those hours
Of
on
course
for
it
so many
is.
days.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
exhausting. I would come back to my hotel room and I would just flop on my bed and I would, you know, put on something ridiculously stupid, like, you know, my guilty pleasure, like 90 Day Fiance or
I love
something
that
like
show.
that, you know, that you just, me too, that you don't have to really think about, and you can throw your slippers at the television saying, what is wrong with these people? You know, so, but it's the virtual one this time, I have to say, and we were just talking before we decided to go live, that being virtual, you're in, if you're doing it and it's a post video where you're just watching on YouTube after the fact, then you're just scribbling notes and you can stop the video and start it again, and you know, and really take your time unpacking everything that they have said. But
Right.
if you're watching it live stream, there's a chat box that's on the side of the live stream, so you're interacting with everybody that is also live streaming, and the moderators are there, but you're not, it's not the same, because you can ask questions in the chat that maybe other live streamers will answer, but they don't get asked to the panel or the guest speaker or what have you. So it's kind of like being, like I said before, that, you know, that old-timey image of, you know, people who didn't have television standing outside the appliance store watching the television behind the glass with everybody else on the sidewalk. And that's kind of what it felt like. You still seeing it, but you're not getting the full experience of it, you know, and you're missing out on the networking and so forth. So you're there strictly for an informative reasons, you know, to be able to learn and hear what they have to say, what the panelists have to say and so forth. So it was good. But, you know, I think I probably would have rather had it have been a Zoom, you know, where there was a moderator that could have had us interacting that way. So it would almost be like a little mini convention within the convention rather than just a chat on the side. So so 20 Books Vegas was good, because that's the most recent one, everybody. That was the most recent one. It was good. A lot of work, but worth it. Absolutely worth it, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The thing that I like about 20 Books as opposed to some other conferences is that the organizers make it a point to keep it as inexpensive as possible.
Yes.
So it's one of the cheaper conferences in that way, but you get a ton of value out of it. Vegas, unfortunately, is not an inexpensive place to go.
No,
so I
no,
do
it's
think
not.
it's nice that they have the virtual option. They also put all of the videos on YouTube afterwards, which is almost unheard of for a convention to then give the material away for free. So I really like their messaging. I really like all the things that they do for authors. They're very much the founders of it, who is Michael Anderle, and who runs it, Craig Martell, are really about lifting up indie authors and also offering the perspective of the traditional side and of the industry side of it, so that authors are getting a very well-rounded picture. And on top of that, they do have the book signing day, which was a lot larger than any of us, I think, thought it was going to be, just because of the level of advertising that was able to be done this year as opposed to other years because of the pandemic. We still had a really great turnout. I had a wonderful experience with a reader who I had met on TikTok. So shout out to Vivi and her daughter, who literally drove 3 hours to come and see me. And it was shocking and amazing, and an experience that I will definitely remember for the rest of my life. So I do appreciate everything that these organizers have done. And I think it would be remiss of me not to give 20 Books to 50K a huge shout out for that.
Yeah, I agree. And because they make it so economical, in
Mhm.
terms of the cost of it. Because there are some conventions that you go to. I mean, RT is one of them, or at least it used to be. I mean,
Used to be,
RT
yeah.
is gone the way of the dodo now. So, but
Right.
it used to cost you upwards of between $600 and $800 just to be there. And if you wanted to do any kind of sponsorship, you're talking in thousands and thousands
Yep.
of dollars in order to be able to do. And then on top of that, your travel and the
Mhm.
hotel and your food and everything. So, it became a very expensive event to attend, especially if you were a new author or an aspiring author and so forth. So when life circumstance got in the way and I wasn't able to attend 20 books to 50K Vegas in person, you know, yeah, did I mind having to eat the $250 registration fee? But
Mhm.
it wasn't like I lost $1,000. And
Right.
then the fact that it's $250, I still now have access to the videos. And I did do some of the live streaming. So I feel like I got some of my money's worth in that
Right.
respect. So let me ask this question, which is probably something that, people want to know is when you did the book signing, aside from all the wonderful industry stuff, when you did the book
Mhm.
signing, were there a lot of readers that came? Did you sell decently or?
There was a good amount of readers. Like I said, I was very surprised by the size of it because they weren't able to do as much advertising this year because of the pandemic conditions than they would have in previous years. And I know already that they're going to start advertising for next year, like in
Yeah,
January.
I'm going to
So
sign up for it.
yeah, so that's huge. And for the fact that the authors themselves, because a lot of people forget this, right? Authors are readers. Like we
Yeah.
love books. That's why we write, because we love books. So a lot of authors who chose not to do the signing that day, and there were a good amount who didn't sign, came to the signing as readers to support other authors, to buy
Mhm.
books. So it felt like a really huge camaraderie in addition to there were definitely outside readers there, but it was also nice to see people that you saw all week coming to the signing and being like, hey, we had a great conversation. I'd really love to buy your book.
That's
Um,
nice. So
yeah.
solidarity is always something that's a wonderful thing. It's funny when I had to put the post up that I wasn't going to be attending in person,
Mm-hmm.
a couple of the event coordinators were just like Erica and Lance. They were like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh my God, you're not coming! I need you to sign my anthology," because I was part of the anthology, one of
Oh,
the anthologies for this. And I was like, "All right, well, next year, bring it next year. I promise I'll come
yeah.
next year." So hopefully life won't get in the way again. But um, convention season for me is
Mm-hmm.
usually over the summer. It usually
Okay.
starts sometime in like in May and it goes to the end of August. I have never ever really done anything in the fall, so this is a nice thing to have to look forward to right before the craziness of the holiday season.
That's so
So
funny because I have the opposite. The fall is the most intense time for me, both in terms of being an author and a publisher. Fall season is crazy. I had left for 20 books on a Sunday, but the Saturday I had done a 1 day local convention that Saturday and then
oh,
immediately left for 20 books on Sunday. So I had back-to-back conventions. I know a lot of people did RAM, which is Romance Authors Mastermind, which was virtual this year. I did not do that, but a lot of people had good things to say
that's in
about that.
Houston in August, right? It's
Yes,
Houston in August, yeah.
and I've heard amazing things about it. The only thing that I will say is that it is more like a traditional convention in terms of pricing. It's
Yeah,
pricey, and
it's expensive. I
it's not for beginner authors either.
mm-mm.
It's for mid-listers and above, really. Like you have
Yep.
to be making some money on your books to get the most out of that conference.
And it's
Um,
mostly contemporary. It's not really paranormal. I'll tell you. Well,
yeah,
at least it
I
was when I was there.
Yeah, I did hear that that changed this year. It did seem to be
Okay.
a lot of paranormal representation there, but it's definitely not your beginner friendly conference, which is
Mm-mm.
fine. There's allowed to be other things out there,
Yep.
but just for anybody who might be thinking about it, make sure that you're making some money from your books before you invest in that particular conference.
Now, industry
Mm-hmm.
conventions like Romance Author Mastermind and
Mm-hmm.
20 books to 50K. Um, I thought Carol Ritter did a version of RT as well, but I don't know if it's still
So
around or she tried and it didn't work out or what have you.
so it was Joe Carroll actually who was running
Oh,
it
I thought it was
after
Carol Ritter.
RT.
Okay. All right.
Carol might have been involved too, but I had my contact was with Joe Carroll, and I know she took over from there. Was Book Lovers Con.
Okay.
Now, I heard about it running one time. I don't know if it's still running, but it switched to really heavily favoring traditional publishing in terms of bringing in some big names and kind of
Yeah.
having, agents and editors pitching, and very much like a more traditional con would look.
Okay.
So it wasn't a big indie representation.
So for indie authors and um for people who are mid-listers and so forth, we have Romance Author Mastermind. We
Mhm.
have 20 books to 50K, which is definitely good for indie as well as aspiring authors.
For
Then
sure.
there's Nink,
Link. Hmm.
which is you have to sell if you're an indie author, you have to sell $5,000 for one
Like a
title over the
year.
course of a year.
Hmm.
And then there's Romance Writers of America, which is the other one
Hmm.
that's industry as well. And there's a
Right.
book signing that's attached to that one, kind of similarly to the 20 books to 50K, although I think the book signing for RWA is charity based, where
Right.
the money goes to charity as opposed to in the author's pocket.
It does. Hmm.
So, but reader centric ones, there's a bunch of reader centric
There is
ones,
tons.
and they are so much fun, at least as far as I'm concerned. I would much rather, I mean, as much as I love hanging with all my author peeps, the reader centric ones are really, really fun.
Yeah.
I do literary love in Savannah. I've been doing that one in every iteration it was for like 10 years.
Hmm.
Or Orlando reads books. I've done the novel experience. I've done an Austin Author Affair. Some of them
Hmm.
they come and they go and they come and they go. But there's also Space Coast. There's Ballbase, right? Ballbase, which is
Hmm.
the other one. What other ones am I missing? There's a
I
bunch of
mean,
other ones.
there's honestly there's so many, from your small conventions to, let's say, 50 to 100 people, to your Comic Cons, which has thousands and
Right,
thousands of people, right? So
right.
we actually took a poll in our I asked one of my authors, she was talking about conventions. I said, "Hey, can you go in our author group and, poll our authors and see what they want to attend?" And the number one that came up that I have not yet been to was Dragon Con. And Dragon Con's in DC.
Yeah, Dragon Dragon Con in DC. It's in Atlanta.
This, I think it was in DC, I thought, this year. Unless
No, it's
I'm
always in.
confusing it with Awesome Con, which was the
Yes,
second one that
Awesome
came
Con
up.
is in DC. Yeah.
Okay.
Dragon
So
Con is always
Dragon
in
Con and
Atlanta.
Awesome Con were the two that came up.
The only way that I mean, Dragon Con is almost impossible to get into as an
Mm-hmm.
author. You usually have to go with a group. The
Mm-hmm.
closest thing that I ever did with that is I could have, if I wanted to, done it with Bard's Tower. I could
Mm-hmm.
have gone and done that. But there are issues with doing it with a large group with one person who's running it, because they're the one who's collecting all the money
Mm-hmm.
from all the sales, and then have to disperse it to each author and take their cut. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to make sure that your contract with them is ironclad and that they have a good reputation for prompt payout.
Right.
Usually what I look for with things like that is, if you're going to be going with a convention aggregator, is like what it kind of is like. If they're going to be running it like a bookseller, and that you're
Mm-hmm.
going to get, that it's going to be, either a 50-50 or a 45-55 type of a split, and that you agree on the price of what they're going to sell your books at, and that they pay within 2 months, the same kind
Mm-hmm.
of way that Amazon or Draft to Digital or any of the other platforms, they usually, it's a 2 month lag before you realize your royalties.
Right.
Somebody who's going to take 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 months to pay you, you don't want anything to do with that. Okay.
Right.
And I've actually had an experience with somebody who didn't pay, and I had
And
to I had to
you said
threaten
an
legal.
aggregator for the con, but is that different from, so for example, with us, we would be going as a vendor, so we could bring our authors too. It's a little bit different, but there's usually
As a
artists
publisher.
as a
Yeah.
publisher. There's usually Artist Alley, though. Is that not
Yeah,
something?
those are usually first come first serve, but unfortunately
Right.
Artist Alley is either in the attic or in the basement. You're not on the vendor
Ah, I
floor.
see. I
So,
see.
and so you get the overflow of people who kind of walk by, and usually get a small table, like the when you would get
Mm-hmm.
like a half table or so. um I'm lucky that this year I can go to RavenCon in Virginia, which is
Mm-hmm.
like, it's a regional Comic Con. And because I said I was going to go with more than one author, more than just myself, I actually was able to get on the vendor floor.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
I have a table waiting for me there with extra badges if I want, for
That's
people. And I
great.
said, they said the table, they're all sold out, so they can't give me another table. So I only have the one 8-foot table or 6-foot
Mm-hmm.
table, whatever. But they said it can hold 2 authors, very, very comfortably. I think you could
Nice.
probably do 3 because
Mm-hmm.
everybody's used to having a small section. And if you stack your books vertically, you could probably do it. But they're being really open about it because I think they're happy to be back in person.
Yeah.
Where the event coordinator said to me, well, if you wanted to round robin, you could have somebody come for a half an hour with their books and then swap off with somebody else, as long as there's
Oh,
always somebody at the table. So I'm going to see if anybody wants to do that with me, because Virginia
that's
is not that
great.
far from New York. Hint, hint, Tina. So we're both New Yorkers, in
marks
case for those you don't
marks
know.
the calendar. I
Yeah.
actually it's funny because so I'm meeting with our senior team on Saturday, and one of the things that I'm going to bring up is like, okay, who's where and who wants to go to which conferences, and are we representing, the company, which authors want to go to which conferences. So that'll be part of our calendar for next year, and probably 2023 as well, as we start to look
Yep.
at conference
Yep.
planning. And we did this before. We used to go to 4 to 5 conferences a year, and then when the pandemic hit, it was like, okay, well, that's completely off the table.
Yeah.
Everything is virtual
Yep.
now.
Yep.
So
So,
if I'm a reader though, right, what am I looking for in a conference? What would you say what would be your advice to readers looking to go to a conference? What should they look for?
well, I've had experience where it's just a 1-day event
Mm-hmm.
where you pay an author will pay as much as $250 for a table for 1 day,
Yep.
and the readers come in, and it's a 3 or 4 hour event, and it's just a book signing and maybe a meet and greet party afterwards. And it can be either free, for the reader to come in, or there are
Mm-hmm.
VIP tickets that'll cost a nominal, like $25 or $35 for you to come in. And that depends if there's somebody there that you really, really are jonesing to meet.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, if I'm a reader, I'm looking for an event that's over the course of a weekend, like a Thursday,
Yeah.
Friday, Saturday. All right. And a breakfast on a Sunday, or some kind of a thing on a Sunday before everybody disperses and goes home.
Mm-hmm.
Something that has meals included, something that has parties included,
Mm-hmm.
that they have author sponsored events that
Mm-hmm.
don't cost you extra, giveaways. One of them that I go to always has baskets that authors donate, with their books
Mm-hmm.
or some other kind of swag or what have you. And the proceeds of that go to an animal shelter, a local animal shelter. So people like
Mm-hmm.
to do things like that. Um, I've sponsored haunted ghost tours, like where
That's
I get,
fun.
have hire a one of those open aired hearses, for the night, and I take 6 readers with me, or 7 readers with me, and I'm the 8th person, and we all pile into the hearse, and then they take you around the haunted places in
Oh my
Savannah or
gosh.
New Orleans or what have you, and those are always really fun.
That's fun.
So that's what I would, if as a reader, that's what I would be interested in, is something that I would get my money's worth, where the registration fee is in line with like what you and I were talking, like between, like around 250 or $300.
Mm-hmm.
And that includes your dinner, like at least 2 dinners and 2
Right.
lunches. And then for me, I love the fact that there's always a ball. Like for
Yeah.
the literary love always has a ball on Saturday night.
Mm-hmm.
Orlando Reads Books always has a ball, and it's usually, it's either an author or a group of authors sponsors it, and there's a theme.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of fun because you get to
Yeah.
play dress up too, which is
Yeah.
great.
I think it's important too that if it's an event where it's just a book signing should be free for readers. Like there's no
Yes.
reason, unless it's a charity donation, there's really no reason for readers to be paying to go to a book signing alone. Now, obviously, there are tons of different types of events. I do also would say if you're a reader to look for the ones with the parties, because the parties are a lot of fun. There are events
Yep.
where authors play different games. One of
Yep.
the things that I used to love when RWA did their national conferences was Heather Graham usually sponsored like a carnival type night,
Mm-hmm.
and they would have
Yep.
all different table games where readers could come and try to win prizes. I thought that was very clever and
Yep.
fun. There's
Yep.
always a sponsored night where it's a different event, whether it's a ball or it's I think the last one I went to
Karaoke.
was karaoke, was like a steampunk theme, and it was
Yep.
phenomenal.
Yep.
So yeah, you definitely want to get your money's worth and make sure that it's not that if you're a reader that you're not attending an industry event, or if you are attending an industry event that you're just attending the book signing day that is free, or if it's a mix between industry and reading, because sometimes they have those types of events too. At RWA was definitely
Right.
one of
Right.
them. So
Yeah,
yeah.
Orlando's Reads Books has that too. They usually Thursday, Friday, and Saturday are the event days, and that
Mm-hmm.
Thursday is usually the industry day
Industry.
for all
Uh-huh.
the for the and for networking and for classes and so forth for people who are either aspiring to be authors or already authors. And then Friday and Saturday are when the parties hit, and then Saturday afternoon is the book signing, and then Saturday night is the big ball, and it's a lot of fun. Um, that's what I would look for as well. The ones like I've signed up to do getting witchy in Salem in
Mm-hmm.
2023. I
Yep, me
know it sounds
too.
like it's a million miles away, a million years away, but that is just an event it's just a book signing, but there are
Mm-hmm.
VIP tickets, and what comes with the VIP tickets, and I think this is one of the things that is good, is that they give readers an incentive because you're getting a bag chock full of stuff that authors have donated that they're giving
Mm-hmm.
away. So you're not getting nothing, you know what I mean? You're getting
Right.
something for your money. If it's $25, you're getting more than $25 worth of stuff, because there's, all kinds of swaggy things in there. There's water bottles, there's books, there's, I don't even know what, it's like that you can put anything in there. So,
Right,
but
and that makes sense. Mhm.
yeah. So anyway, what is the craziest one you've ever been to?
Ooh, craziest one. I mean, Comic-Con is insane. New York Comic-Con is an
Yeah.
event in itself. And obviously it's not a reader-based event. It's kind of in tangent, I would say, to our industry, but there's certainly authors who attend. But it's massive. It's the scale of people and the things going on are it's a little bit bigger than I actually prefer. I don't
Yeah.
I've been to Comic Con several times and I can't say that I'm like, yay, Comic Con again. It's more like, ooh, Comic Con again. It's a
Yeah.
little too much for me. What about
I did.
you?
I think the craziest one I've ever been to is the same as New York Comic Con. I did it in
Yeah.
2018. I worked Sherilyn Kenyon's booth,
Mm-hmm.
and she was really cool about letting me bring my own books. And
Nice.
it was myself and it was Quincy Allen. We were
Mm-hmm.
the two authors that were helping her out, and she gave us 1/3 of her booth to set up
Oh,
our books and do our spiel as readers came by to meet her and to talk to her and so forth. So that was a lot of fun, but it was exhausting. It was absolutely
yeah.
exhausting and crazy. I mean, but the costumes were worth it. The people really go all out.
Oh, they're
That was,
incredible.
yeah, they were incredible. I mean, I think people work on those costumes for an entire year ahead of time, from
For
one
sure.
event to another. So, but that was crazy. And of course, New York City being New York City, it's always getting there is always an interesting thing, especially when they close the only subway that goes straight to the convention
Yeah.
center. So you have to walk blocks and blocks and blocks. So you see hordes of people in all these costumes crossing the street like there's been an invasion.
Right. And
So
if you're not from the area, New York Comic Con rather, it takes place at the Javits Center, which is near nothing else.
yeah,
Like it's
I
just
mean,
on the it's
it's
just
blocks and
not
blocks and
close.
blocks long. It's huge.
Like you
So
think you can get anywhere on the train in New York City, and for the most part it's true, but like there you just can't get there easily. So
no.
you're walking quite a bit.
So closing the 7 train was not a good thing,
Yeah, it's brutal.
So anyway, so anything else you want to say? Do you want to
Yeah.
tell our amazing peeps watching?
So I would say also to think about what would be the best advice that you would give somebody who's introverted or suffering from anxiety or social anxiety, especially who wants to attend a conference. Like, what would be your best advice for them?
Well, I'm like you. I am an extroverted introvert. But I think I slant a little more like, towards the extroverted because it's easy for me to talk. I don't have
Mm-hmm.
no problem talking to people when I'm on.
Mm-hmm.
My advice to somebody who suffers from social anxiety or is extremely shy, introverted person is to make sure that you have a pal that can be on, like me or
Yep.
you, that can help you deflect.
Mm-hmm.
If there's too many people clamoring, that they can kind of, redirect the crowd. I have an anecdote from when last time I was in Vegas, which was at the Novel Experience. I and two other authors sponsored a pub crawl. And,
Mm.
one of the other authors is she was very much an extroverted introvert like me, but for
Mm-hmm.
some reason just what got overwhelmed. And the other one was very, very much an introvert. And the two of them both bailed. And the one
Oh no.
that was an extra, really, really introverted. I mean, you could see the sweat beads on her forehead because we had like 20 or 25 women that decided they wanted to do this pub crawl. And
Oh
in
my
Vegas,
gosh.
anytime you get a bunch of raucous people together, it always is like a magnet goes off and everybody who wants to join the party. Next thing you know, you have this horde with you, following you from pub to pub to pub and bar to bar to bar. So I
Right.
ended up there were a couple of authors that came along just to kind of see what was going on. And I'm sorry, but I conscripted them. I did. I was like, I'm sorry, you have now been drafted. You are now going to be a sponsor of this and help me. It was like herding cats.
Oh,
So
that's
that's
so funny.
but it was a lot of fun. But that would be my only advice is make sure that you have somebody that you know well enough
Mm-hmm.
to be able to kind of pal around with that would help take the pressure off. And take breaks. Pace
Yes.
yourself, take breaks. What about you? What would be your advice?
I mean, that's fantastic advice. I think also just like know your own limits. Like, not every point in your life are you going to be able to go to a con like that. Start small, go to a 1 day
Yeah.
conference, something that's going to be more comfortable for you where you can kind of test the waters and then work your way up. Because, like, I'm a ham and I
Yep.
love to chat with people, and I'll go up to a perfect stranger and say hello and start talking.
Yep.
But that also took years to work up to. I wasn't
Yes.
like that in my 20s. Like, I was
Yep.
definitely not somebody who was going to do that. I was much more shy. And I think that's okay as long as you're just very, aware of your own boundaries and what your needs are, especially if you're suffering from social anxiety. I feel
Yes.
like a con is going to be a nightmare for you. So maybe try virtual first now that you have that option, get all of the
Yep.
learning that you can out of it. And then if you're looking to go to a con for networking purposes, bring a buddy.
Yeah.
100%. I think that's great advice. Bring,
Yep.
bring your extroverted buddy, drag him
Yep.
along and use him like a shield.
Absolutely. And I have to say, one of the things that I noticed that this year that the in-person conventions that I did was they were very aware of people's personal bubbles because of the
Yes.
pandemic, and that there were different wristbands that they had that depending on the color, and everybody was aware of what the three levels were. There was like if
Mm-hmm.
you had a certain color wristband, you were up for hugs and come on, bring it in, baby. And then there
Yep.
was other ones where you were okay with a handshake, with permission, and the other
Right.
color was like 6 feet, please.
Yep.
So it's and I think that was really terrific that the event coordinators are being very proactive about
Yeah.
respecting people's personal boundaries in that respect.
I mean,
So
and that was something that I was definitely not familiar with. I'm a hugger by nature. And a quick story, when I met in person a friend of mine that had been a friend of mine online for many, many years, I was so excited to meet her that when I saw her, I kind of did like this running, flying tackle hug thing because I was just that excited. And she was not a hugger. And I felt horrible. Like, what should have been this very exciting experience, getting to meet in person for the first time, turned into this like awkward situation. And obviously we got past it, but it didn't need to be that. And it was because of my own, inability to be aware of those boundaries. And it was something that I had to learn. And now I'm like, every time I walk up to somebody, I'm like, are you okay with hugs? Because I'm a
yeah,
hugger. If you're not,
yeah,
that's okay.
yeah. I actually had the gal that taught me how to do Bonnie Paulson, who taught me about Facebook ads and so forth. She's from, the Midwest and whatnot. And when I was there, I'm all like masked up and, and I have my ask permission buffs,
Right.
bracelet on. And she looked at me and she goes, I'm a hugger. Are you okay with a hug? Can I give you a hug? And I was like, yeah, okay. And she's like, so she's like, come here, and give me a bear hug. But you get used to it, and then you start to relax. You feel your shoulders kind of falling, and out of your ears and so forth. But pace yourself, because even people who have taught themselves to be as extroverted as you and I can still become overwhelmed.
100%.
And you have to be able to realize, okay, I need a half an hour just to kind of go and sit with a cup of tea, or to go back to my room and take my shoes off and massage my toes because I've been walking around all day.
Yep.
Make a phone call, talk to somebody from home or what have you, or just close your eyes and sit and breathe, that type of a thing. So then you can prepare yourself, and it's like you have to get yourself into the Zen place so that you can explode out of yourself.
That actually happened to me too. I think it was the third day of the con, and it was the last panel of the day. And I had sat down, there was rows of tables, and there were 3 ladies around me, and they were all having a conversation, and perfectly lovely. But I had hit the wall, and I was just like in my own head, and I didn't say anything. Like, they tried a couple times to engage me, and I didn't say a word. And after the panel was over, I kind of snapped out of it, and I turned to them and I said, I am so sorry. I did not mean to come off rude. I was just having a moment. And they were all just perfectly lovely and understanding about it, because they all know what it's like to just, you're in it. And sometimes you just have a moment where you're totally overwhelmed and need that quiet space, and you're in the middle of people. So.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, we had a name for it. We used to call my author group that goes to these conventions with me, we call it con crud. Okay. Yes. It's not just coming, the exchange of germs, but it's the crud that kind of corrodes your head and your soul, because you've been out there, it's almost like you're an exposed nerve for 3 or 4 days or even longer, depending on the event. And then when you get back home, that you kind of have to, have that membrane reabsorbed into so that you can. So yeah, con crud is a real thing, where you feel a little drained. You feel drained. Sometimes it causes me to have writer's block, well, not writer's block, but it where all my creative juices and all my energies have gone into this convention, preparing for it, doing it, and then coming down from it, that I need to regroup. I need to refill my well in order to be able to sit down and write, and
that's me too. 100%. I was planning to take a few days at the end of October after my last release before I started on the new book. And I was going to start November 1st. I did not. I haven't written a word, because all I've been thinking about is the first conference, and then of course the long conference. So I have not written at all, which I'm perfectly okay with, to be quite honest, because it was so mentally draining. It was invigorating. I learned a ton. I got to meet wonderful people, but it was also definitely draining. And I just kind of feel like I need to relax a little bit. I need my mind to calm before I can jump back into the creative process.
And that's the only other advice I can give people who are looking to go to conventions, is that besides pacing yourself, be kind to yourself. Be kind. Yes. You know what I mean? When you get back from this event, realize that it is work, and that it is work on steroids, and that you need to be able to rejuvenate yourself to the point where you can be creative again. Now, some people jump right in. Some people like, woohoo, and they just, they can type away, based on what's going on. And some people
were nanoing. I was like,
I know. Some people, they write while they're in convention, but then again, if you're holed up in your room writing, you're missing.
Yeah,
you're missing out. So I have a personal rule of thumb. Whenever I will have a deadline up until convention season really kicks off, and that's it. Smart. My books go to the editor at a minimum of 3 weeks minimum from the time that the convention has to be, so that if and it has to be super uber polished and so forth. So if it gets 2 passes, and then it gets published, so that I could either debut it at that event or or the day of the event or during the event, I can debut it. But other than that, no, I don't do any, I can't write while I'm in event mode, while I'm in convention mode. So, you have to, I don't plan any deadlines for afterwards, because then it becomes a chore. And writing should never, for an author, writing should never be a chore. It should never be something that you feel like, oh my God, now I have to do. And there's your muse with a gun to your head saying, do this,
Right.
So at least
And
that's
I think, and just a
my
little,
opinion.
side note to that, because I know a lot of advice that gets thrown out there is to write every day. I don't like this advice. I like the advice of develop a good writing routine,
Mhm.
um, and to know yourself. Because some people, I spoke to several authors who are, you know, they don't write every day. They write in these huge bulks of like 5,000 words on a weekend or in a day. And they write for X amount of days and then they take X amount of days off. And that's their process and it works for them. So
Find your
don't
process.
find your process. Yeah. And don't be so hard on yourself if you're
Right.
at a convention and suddenly you're like, oh my God, I have to write because you've heard this, mantra of write every day. No, you're working and you're working really hard. And you're also allowed not to work. You're also allowed to take days off and to relax. So just
Yep.
just be aware of that as well, because I like I said, I just get a little nervous when we're dictating something, especially to newbie authors, of like, this is the way and this is how it must be,
Yeah.
because it's not true.
No, everybody has a different process.
Mm-hmm.
And what works for one, like Amanda Lee, she writes her paranormal code, witchy cozy mysteries. She writes on average 10,000 words a day.
Yeah.
It's just the kind of the kind of writer that she is. She comes from a journalistic background. She was a reporter. So
Right.
words are her thing. And and she has the training from being in a busy, you know, reporter room. I don't know what the hell it's called, copy room, whatever.
Yeah.
With people, phones ringing and people talking around you and so forth. And she still had to make a deadline, still had to do her byline. So she's trained herself to be able to do that. And she
Mm-hmm.
writes, she writes almost every day, and she's got a backlog of books that are prepared ahead of time and whatnot. She is who I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I aspire to be that organized and to be able, but I will never be able to write 10,000 words a day.
Yeah.
My personal best is 8. And that was with me crying while I was doing it because I
Yeah.
had a deadline, so
And you just don't
I
want to get to that point where you're feeling
no,
burnt out. And some of the, like I said, this is not everybody, but some of the advice that I did hear was like, get less hours of sleep and get up early and forego XYZ. And I'm like, no,
no,
that's not
no,
life. That's not living.
no,
First of all,
nope.
yeah, you should get as much hours of sleep as your body needs, and that's going to be different for everybody. But I'm a good
Yeah.
8 to 9 hour kind of girl. Like I need my sleep. Like no, and I am the least productive person at 5 a.m. There is no way in heck that I would be able to write at 5 a.m. There's many people that do, but I am
Danielle
a
Bannister is up at 5
girl.
o'clock in the morning and does it.
Go for it.
I'm still drooling on my pillow at 5
Nope.
o'clock in the
I
morning.
am a night owl. I named the company City Owl for a reason. I'm a night person. I could never, even if I'm awake at 5 a.m., there's no way my brain is functioning enough to write at 5 a.m. So,
Yeah.
But if I had heard that advice as a younger author of like, you must get up early and write before the sun rises, I would feel really depressed.
See, I'm a morning person more so than a night person. But I couldn't do it at 5 o'clock in the morning. I mean, if I'm
Mm-hmm.
up and the house is quiet and it's like 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, I'll get my coffee and I'll sit down at my computer and I will write then.
Mm-hmm.
And I do my best work because I'm most creative, I think, in the morning and the early afternoon. But then I hit a wall and I got to take a
Mm-hmm.
break. And then all of a sudden, if I'm up and I'm awake, like if I've had a cup of coffee at 8:30 or 9 o'clock, it's all of a sudden 11 o'clock. I'm like, okay, words. So you know, and then I'll write until like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, but then I crash the next day.
Yeah.
So my only advice, I think, when it comes to that is, know yourself, know your limits, both for conventions and in your everyday writing life. Treat it like a business. People who work, whether they work shift work or they work, a job where they can work from home, there's downtime. You take time for lunch.
Mm-hmm.
There's a quitting time. Just because you're sitting in front of your computer in your own living room doesn't mean that you're chained to it.
Right.
give yourself, a time slot that, like you said, what did you call it? Know your process and a work ethic, a writing ethic, to be able to do something every day, whether it's words or whether it's doing marketing or learning something new or read. Use your because reading is important for an author. Authors who don't read really are putting themselves at a disadvantage.
Right. And I know that we're getting a little off topic, but just to jump into that one last point, some authors don't read in the genre while they're writing it, but I really do recommend, especially if you're writing genre fiction of any kind, that you should read widely within that genre so that you are aware of what readers want, what the tropes are, what the common trends are, and you can break them if you want to, but you should be aware of them and know them. And that's one of the things that I did for my sci-fi romance when I decided to make the move from paranormal to sci-fi is I don't know what I'm up to now, but at the time I read over 140 books in that genre before I ever put one word on the page.
But the operative words that you used was beforehand.
Yes.
Beforehand. I don't recommend reading in that genre while you were actively writing, because you can have undue influence in that respect. But finish your books, do your research, finish your books, and then write it. Make notes. Deconstruct a book. Take a book and deconstruct it, and one that's very successful. See what see what the pacing is and what they've put in it, and so forth. So we're totally off topic from conventions. So
it's okay. It's the best learning tool, though.
Yeah,
but the conventions for authors are a lot, besides networking, they're about learning. So any way that you can learn is another way that you should.
Yes. Yep. Right. I mean, I have a meme that's up on my Facebook page. That's a picture of Nora Roberts holding up a whiteboard that says, anybody tells you that there's one way to write is full of shit, basically. So, and it's true.
That's true. And that's the perfect place for us to end, because I can't think of anything better than a Nora Roberts meme. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Marianne, for hosting today, and join us every week, Monday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Check us out on our website for all the details about all the hosts and all of our previous podcasts. You can watch us on YouTube and stream us wherever podcasts are streamed. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Wait! Before you go, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and check us out on our website, boundbybookspodcast.com.